Imagine a hidden gem within a hidden gem, a special place that is secluded in an obscure land. That is the sort of place we are going to today. Albania has been hailed as Europe's hidden gem over the past few years, and while it has grown in popularity due to its stunning mountains, clear water, delicious food, and friendly people, it is still not well known like its neighbors of Greece and Italy. In this enchanted land, away from the beach scene and the cities, lies a small, barely known village that has an important past. Once a bustling metropolis, once one of the bigger cities in the Balkans, now reduced to a small town of under 1,000 people, perhaps as little as 500 permanent residents. In the mountains of southeastern Albania near the city of Korça lies the small stone-built village of Voskopoje. This village used to be known as the city of Moscopolis in its glorious past when it was the hub of trade, literature, and higher learning. The story of this place begins as the once mighty Roman Empire was shrinking into a land of despotates that, while usually still loyal to the imperial court in the capital of Constantinople, were largely on their own to self-govern. The lands that stretched from the Albanian Adriatic in the west to Kastoria, Greece in the east, were held by the Albanian noble family Muzaka, whom were despots that maintained official Roman court titles and were of great importance to the dwindling empire. In the southern Albanian mountains, the Muzaka likely encouraged or allowed the founding of a town along an important east-west trade route. There have not been any archaeological surveys performed in the entire area, but given its important location, it has been speculated that a fortified outpost likely existed here before the town sprang up. It wouldn't have been much, and would have been populated by semi-nomadic herders, a mix of Slavic people with some Aromanians, Albanians, and Greeks. The main activity would have been the raising of livestock. In the early 1400s, shortly before the Ottomans would take control of the Roman capital Constantinople, they conquered the area and took control of Voskopoja. Like Kastoria and several other places the Muzaka controlled, the despots may have made a deal with the Ottomans that allowed the town some degree of autonomy and spared the inhabitants a bloody fate by handing over the town peacefully. The settlement began to grow and thrive in the 1600s. Herders and agriculture still remained important, but craftsmen and metalworkers began to create their wares here. Eventually it would become an international commercial powerhouse, trading with as faraway places as Germany, Hungary, and Italy. At some point, the city grew as a cultural center for the Aromanian or Vlach people. These were people who lived in the Greek-speaking eastern half of the former Roman Empire, but primarily spoke Latin instead of Greek as their first language, though they would have spoken Greek as well in most cases. While the town would have still been a mix of people, the Aromanians appear to have become the majority by the 1700s. Voskopoja continued to grow and may have had a population as large as 40,000 people, with some claiming as many as 70,000, though this is probably not the case. At any rate, it was one of the bigger cities in the Balkans and had commercial interests far and wide. Eventually it was renamed Moscopole as it grew in importance. The city retained its Byzantine Roman identity, and it was an important center for that culture as well as the Orthodox Church. At one point there were 24 churches in the city, of which 8 remain today. Conversely, there is only mention of one mosque ever existing here, and it has vanished completely. Likely a small structure provided for traveling Muslim traders rather than a large Ottoman structure demonstrating the relative autonomy of the town. You can even see a Byzantine eagle crest in this fresco, a rare symbol of the extinct empire that still lived on in some cities like Kastoria and indeed here in Voskopoja. Moscopole, as the city was known during this period, really flourished through the 1700s. It was not only a Byzantine cultural preserve, but also a thriving intellectual center. It was the only place with a printing press and a publishing house outside of Constantinople in the Ottoman realm, stretching all the way from Asia throughout the Balkans. Here, the first Greek-Albanian lexicon was published, as were philosophical and theological works in Greek, Albanian, Aromanian, and Slavonic, all using the Greek alphabet. Even a quadrilingual lexicon in these languages was produced. There was also an academy that offered a curriculum in classical Greek, philosophy, theology, mathematics, and rhetoric, taught in Greek and possibly Aromanian and Albanian as well. The academy here influenced Balkan education into the 19th century, with schools being founded in Greece, North Macedonia, and Romania based on what was called the Moscopolian tradition. Unfortunately, it wasn't to last though. All this autonomy, thriving Byzantine Roman heritage, intellectual prowess, and commercial power made it a target for the Ottomans once it had reached its zenith. Moscopole was a competitor to Ottoman Muslim traders. Its Greco-Roman intellectuals challenged Islamic authority, and its printing press spread anti-Ottoman sentiment. When it began to get resistant and even belligerent to the Ottomans, they took the opportunity to snuff it out. In the late 18th century, the city openly supported a Russian-backed Greek revolt in the southern Peloponnese and on the island of Crete. They even provided funds and recruits. These uppity people would have to be punished for their insolence. The Ottomans, aided by dedicated Muslim Albanians, sacked the city twice with religious fervor. They burned the churches to the extent possible. They ethnically cleansed the population. They destroyed the famous printing press. They razed the academy. Thousands of manuscripts and books were lost. Much of the population that didn't escape was massacred or enslaved. The cultural gem that sat in the Albanian mountains was gone. It would never be more than a small village again. Today, fittingly renamed Voskopoja like it was in the beginning, is a small village with a tiny population of around 500. It is still a beautiful place though. Everything is stone, and some churches and a monastery survive that have been undergoing restoration. The food is fantastic. Andrea and my favorite restaurant is here. Shout out to Taverna Voskopoja. But we went to a few places and had truly great food everywhere we went. It is worth visiting just for the food. This concludes my brief history of this cultural gem in the Albanian mountains. Please subscribe and like if you enjoyed this. If you want to support this kind of work, feel free to buy me a coffee or become a member of my Patreon. The links are below. These little documentaries are a lot to put together, and your support is greatly appreciated as it makes it possible for me to make more. The internet is full of crass, barbaric content, and I want to continue to add a little bit of intellectual culture to the mix. Mira Pavsham.